Welcome. And those for you'll remember Rolando. He came to tour Corpus Christi when we first opened the museum. Came with the volunteers.
Yes. Well, thank y'all very much. Thank y'all for having me here. And as Ed said, I represent the National Park Service down here at Palo Alto Battlefield, which we preserve and interpret the site of the first battle between the U.S.-Mexican War, about 1846 through 1848. And this year, 2004, we really reached a major milestone. We have our first on-site presence. Right now, this kind of shows, this is what Congress established in 1992 as our park boundary. This, oh yeah, thank you.
That helps.
Yeah, keep it dark. This right in here, this dark, this is black and this is red. This is what we own right now, which is about 1,600 acres. This is what Congress established us to get. So we're still in the process of acquiring land, although right now with the government budgets and all that, we're probably on hold for a while. And like I said, we've reached a major milestone this year. We have our first on-site presence in our developments. We have a visitor center, a little trail, and our overlook is a Zoom version of it. And we also have a handicapped or ADA accessible road with a parking lot up here for people who can't make the close to 3/4 mile walk to the overlook and back. But before we did all this construction and development, of course, we had our compliance investigations. We found we knew kind of where the battlefield is and all that. We knew this was a low probability area, but we did find a few. I think this is just a small round shot, probably more of a rifle ball than anything. But I think we only found 3 shots that could be possibly in the era of mid-19th century. But we do have our brand new building, and I don't know how many of y'all have been out. I know a couple of y'all have visited us, and I'm glad I have. And I'll just kind of give you a quick tour of what we have at our building and our facilities. These are our front doors. And welcome to our brand new visitor center. And inside, we have a lot of spots. If any of y'all ever went to our interim visitor center, which was in the second floor of an IBC bank in the middle of Brownsville, these are the same exhibits we have. But we were able to fit them in quite nicely in there. We still have the story. And along with our exhibits, one thing I got to mention, right now, the person who was originally slated to come here is in Harper's Ferry with exhibit planning. As we're getting new exhibits designed specifically for this building. So all this will got to be changed. This will be better utilized. But we do have our book sales area, which we're also working on improving. We're going to be getting shelves and all that soon, hopefully. We also have an AV room. Sits at least 50. And a little classroom that's kind of a multi-function room for all sorts of presentations, meetings, groups, and all that. But like I said, as we're getting ready it might be a little while, but we are designing exhibits specifically for this building. But you notice out here on the back plaza, I took it this high up looking down. This is a big map that you could walk on, step on, but all these symbols right here, you can't see them too well, but this is ships. There's Full Port right in there, Palo Alto represented by cannon, and Resaca de la Palma by swords. All those are going to have interpretive panels on the wall outside around the map. And then you walk out the trail to get to the main area of the battlefield. We just have a few waysides out, but we'll be putting in more as we progress. You follow the trail through the kind of nice, serene environment. It's been very pleasant since we've been out there. And you make it out to our overlook, which our overlook sits at the western edge of the battlefield, kind of midway in between where the Mexican and American lines spaced off at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on May 8th, 1846. And there's 3 panels right now that kind of explain the the events of the day. But on January 24th, as I said, when we made our major milestone, January 24th, 2004, we had our grand opening ceremonies, and we had color guards from both Mexico and the United States. We also had a gun salute for the soldiers who fought and fell at Palo Alto. And we had a pretty good crowd. We figured about 500 people or so. We had a lot of interest. We also had Governor Rick Perry come down for a keynote speaker. And quite a few local, state, national politicians, dignitaries. And we also had some essay contests. That little girl was a junior high student at Brownsville School District who won the essay contest and was able to come out and present her paper, a little essay and her thing.
It was excellent, wasn't it?
Yes, very, very moving. And these people were all very instrumental in helping the park get formed, and so they kind of cut the ribbon, which opened the park. And we didn't expect it to happen, but with construction schedules and really still the construction company not totally out of the picture, when we had our ribbon cutting ceremony, that was actually the first day the park was open, the building was open to the public. And it was kind of a nice affair. But since we've been open out there since January 24th, we've had over 1,300 school kids come out, mainly from the Brownsville Independent School District, but also from Los Fresnos, Harlingen, Santa Rosa. So if y'all know anybody here in Port Isabel School District, let them know we're available for field trips and all that. And we've also probably had an equal number of just regular visitors come in. And right now, of course, during the summer, we've definitely seen a decline, but we still get a few visitors every day during the weekdays, and on weekends we pick up, maybe getting 20, 30 visitors out there. And one of the things we're working on to offer, like I said, just over the next 5 to 10 years, we're really going to be making leaps and bounds of what we have to offer. Working on getting a living history program here at the park with the historic weapons and all that. So we can offer it ourselves. We usually have, I don't know if any of y'all are familiar or went to the living history encampment we had back in 2002 at the park, and then there were some in '98 down at Resaca de la Palma in Brownsville, where you have these big groups of living historians that come down and show what it was like to be a soldier back in 1846. So right now we're in the process of acquiring some replica muskets, some model 1816 American-made guns, and then some British Brown Besses that the Mexican Army or Mexican infantry would have used. And when we get our budgets in for 2004, we're going to try and get uniforms for most of the staff, and then for some volunteers also. We would like to have volunteers participate in our living history program and need local people. Okay. But one of the things I'm going to talk about here is some of our upcoming projects we have going on, as we briefly discussed a little bit earlier. One of the main ones that's going on really soon, like a week after next, we're going to be trying to identify the historic road that went from Port Isabel to Matamoros, and it played a major role during the battle. That's the road that the Mexican Army lined up to kind of hold the American Army from making it way back to Fort Brown and relieving the siege, which was Fort Texas at the time. And here's kind of a zoom up of the road coming through the battlefield, right there. But as you can tell, one of the problems we're dealing with is there's a lot of discrepancies within the historic record. You know, some show the road kind of coming in this with the ponds, and you know, there's always debate about the Resacas, how they were, and but none of the historic maps really show anything looking like a riverine system like what we think of a Resaca. But in this 1934 aerial photo, it doesn't come in too clear on this image, but you can see a trace of the road right here, coming down right in there. But also you see these right here. But here on this modern aerial, which doesn't show up, but right in here, here's a good trace of the road. What we're going to do right now, we have hiring this guy who's going to come down with a magnetometer, but also ground penetrating radar. This here is still very clear and it's kind of visible on the ground surface today. So we're gonna use that for a base and run some test grids over there to kind of see if there's still a strong, or see what kind of subsurface signature there is to the road, and then move on up into the area where this area has been plowed and there's really no surface visual of the road trace, to kind of see if there's any below the surface signature of the road in there. So hopefully this summer.
How do they tell that where the road was? I mean, when you say below surface.
Okay, go ahead and hit the slide and see if this is. Okay, no, yeah. Here's some things. Here's what I was talking about. It shows up a little better on this slide in there, but you can see the trace of the road right there. Go ahead and hit it one more time. This is the magnetometer right there, and I've used more of a different one that you sit up on a pole and you can't have any metal. You can't wear pants with zippers or metal buttons or anything like that. And you set up a grid like that, and like a 20 meter by 20 meter grid, and at every 1 meter interval, you take a click. Okay, you take a click at each thing, and then you get a signal. And in a little bit, I'll show you a better view of what the image, what the data looks like. But you get a signal from that, and usually you can tell if there's any type of it looks for disturbances in the soil. There's 3 main types of geophysical remote sensing techniques that we use in archaeology a lot. And one is the magnetometer, the other ground penetrating radar, and the other is resistivity. And they all measure the disturbance in the ground. Like the road over time, it will make ruts, it will compact the subsurface, so you can see that, you can tell the base which has not been altered, the other ground away from it, and then you have the area that is. And especially if there's like something being dug, which is what we're going to get into right now, the guy who's coming down to do our road is also coming down to do a project at Fort Brown. And I was mentioning there's a whole bunch of different people that own the properties, and it was kind of hard getting all the permission. But it was in the grant, it's even just as difficult because we're just a partner in all this. A grant was awarded from the National Trust, awarded to Los Caminos de Rio down here, which is a non-profit historic organization, and Ed's vice president on the board. And we're working with them. The city of Brownsville is also a partner in this grant, and Brownsville Community Foundation. And so what we're going to do, we're going to try to retrace the actual earthworks that was placed. This is what remains actually out there. I don't know if any of y'all have been out to the driving range at the golf course out there. There is just one small bastion over here, and a parapet wall, and the parapet wall over here. But what really the fort is, with this overlay, illustrates the fort would extend all the way up in there, around there. And go ahead. This is the ground penetrating radar. Like I said, we set up a grid, but we usually have a line running with 1 meter tapes or something at every interval. That way you get a click, and it records an image. It records an image of everything. The magnetometer gets the magnetic gradient in the ground. The resistivity gets soil compaction, and the GPR gets anomalies and ground disturbance. Those are their fortes. This is what the unit looks like, at least this particular one. And this is the raw data that's coming up on the screen as you go. I did some work with a ground penetrating radar on a very similar situation up at Civil War earthworks up in Corinth, Mississippi. And as you can see, this is kind of what an anomaly looks like out there. As it is kind of different. It takes really a lot of experience in dealing with it to really point it out. But ground penetrating radars have also been used on historic cemeteries with great success. And then all those things, what we just saw, that last slice, is something, just a slice right there. like that from the clicks, and then put them all together. This is a composite of the plan. This is the same thing as this. They just use different color enhancements. You can see this is a modern sidewalk that's up on there. But what we're looking at in this Civil War earthworks, here is the remains of the earthworks right there. You can, like I said, sometimes it takes a trained eye and experience to sometimes really notice some of these. But we went ahead and we ground truth this area, and we did find the remnants of the moat that was in front of the earthworks and the built-up thing, which it was a Confederate earthworks, and as soon as the Union took the city, they leveled the earthworks and all that around there as they continue moving on into south. One of the next major projects we're having there at with the park that the park is a partner as is at Resaca de la Palma, which is the battle that took place after the Palo Alto on the following day. And this took what happened. Palo Alto turned into an artillery duel, and militarily it was a draw. Neither side gave up the field, although the American Army had the advantage. They definitely fared a lot better in the fight at Palo Alto. So during the night or early in the morning, the Mexican commander, General Arista, decided to leave the Prairie of Palo Alto to find a better location to fight, which is here at Resaca de la Palma, using the brush and the natural levees of the earthworks as embankments and cover for his men to negate the effects of the U.S. artillery. And this is a modern picture of the Palo Alto, of Resaca de la Palma. And this is the historic map over there. This is right there. As you can see, the troops and all that were spread way out over there and here. This is what remains. This is the NHL, which is about 35 acres of that. And this summer, we're going to be having a team, a crew from Austin, from PBS&J up in Austin, come down, and they're mainly going to they'll do a little bit of metal detecting, some shovel testing, and some backhoe trenching out there. And the main objective of this is to test the integrity of the battlefield. We don't just want to go in there with metal detectors, and then if we don't find a lot, have more questions. We're kind of answer what has happened to the landform. As you can see from this aerial, during the 60s, this thing was built into a polo field, and so we know the ground has been reworked. We suspect that fill was brought in to kind of plane this off and level it up, as there is a little berm built up over here. And so that's why we're kind of emphasizing the geomorphological aspect of this archaeological investigation to kind of let us know what to expect, what the potential for data research and recovery is at the battlefield site. And here's our proposed plan. These are shovel tests that we'll be doing, and these are going to be metal detector grids. And then we're going to put about 6 backhoe trenches throughout the field, depending on what our shovel tests tell us. And before we put any the backhoe trenches in, we'll also metal detect those areas too. So I really hope to get a good understanding of what the state of this little peninsula is, and what cultural resources we have to protect, and help us lead for further archaeological investigations. Okay. That's the end of the PowerPoint, but
The polo field, was this the one off of Paredes where the Utoria played polo? Okay.
yes, it's right there.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be kind of tricky to go back, but I was gonna say, let me see if I can get there. I think you're gonna, yeah.
Is that land now protected?
Yes, well actually the Brownsville Community Foundation bought it from the city. Let's see.
gonna be no more.
The Brownsville Community Foundation purchased it from the city to help preserve the battlefield and to get the National Park Service presence out there in the way of our headquarters. I was also going to say in the '67, they also found a mass burial of Mexican soldiers out here in this lake when they were trenching, when they were building this subdivision out there. So we know that the resources did extend well beyond this the NHL, but they really lost the urban development. But at this time, I'd like to answer any questions y'all might have and talk about any archaeological projects or anything with Battlefield.
Let me ask you, part of those 30, was it 37 people in that burial that they found? They said that those women too, or is that just
Actually, a graduate student did his master's thesis, Eric Radliff, on it, and he ID'd 4 women in it, and they reckon it was about 38 to 40 skeletal individuals in those skeletal remains. And in this master's thesis, he said there were 4 women. Later, that's been refuted by Gentry Steele out of A&M and Bramblett after further researching on the bones and all that. So although that is still come up, and I know there's been efforts by TARL, Texas Archaeological Research Lab, who actually where the remains are right now, to repatriate them to the Mexican government, and throughout from the 70s well up into the 90s, and there's even a move right now to have them reinterred somewhere, and that issue has come up. But according to for us, I really believe it's all male remains. They're just lie in that range that could kind of ambiguous.
I hear stories from people that live in Brownsville, but they said that when they were, the contractors were building around there, when they had from subdivision, that they found more. And I know that's like the one story. There's a basement, and there's some more. But they said that they just buried them over. But is that true, or that's?
I heard that to be true, and I can't say whether it was or not. It seems, when they came down, it definitely for construction, and they did the right thing. They reported, and the people who came down was actually Thomas Hester, Mike Collins, and Al Wazlowski. They were all graduate students at UT back in the '60s, and Dr. Hester has now retired. He was director of TARL and all that. But let me think where I was going. But it's kind of hard to say really whether that happened. You can't, whether it happened or not, the remains are lost. And I know they did have trouble from talking with Hester and Collins. They did have trouble. They had to camp out there at night because people were going into their open excavations in the evenings or so looking for remains. And there were some things that they had saw partially uncovered, and that when they came back in the morning were gone. And that's why there's not a lot of artifacts with the remains, but they definitely had some uniform accoutrements, and there were a couple bones with musket balls in them, or edge weapon wounds to the bones.
Has Mexico expressed any interest in this?
No, and that I was going to say, Juanita, one of the things I was bringing up, most recently, as there've been efforts to reinter them here in Brownsville, and TARL say, well, no, we want to give them to Mexico, and they believe that the federal government of Mexico is really the only entity that should get them. Used that the women, the older women, we don't know that they're really Mexican soldiers and all that. But really, what it is this still is a very sore spot in the Mexican history, and so they do not want any more reminders of it, to be brought back. As far as that's my interpretation of the situation.
In the meeting with Los Caminos Real, some people brought up, especially on the Mexican side, that they should be buried here because they were fighting for their country, and it was their country at the time. And that's what some of the Mexican people, during the meeting that we had, said, well, they should be honored and buried where they were fighting. They died in their own country, before becoming Mexican. But you're right, it's like Lou touched on.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems we have as a park, is our establishing legislation charges us to get input and how would you say, form partners with the various entities that are our counterparts in Mexico. And although we have gotten some input, we've had binational conferences, but officially, we could not get a memorandum of agreement or understanding between government entity and the National Park Service. They have been like that for natural resources up along, like in Big Bend and along the coast, but as far as anything dealing with the U.S.-Mexican War, there's a brick wall that just automatically comes up. And it was funny, when we were having our grand opening ceremony, we really wanted it to be well balanced with Mexican representation. As you can see, the color guard was from a high school group in Matamoros. And the one person who spoke, he's actually the city historian for Matamoros, but the mayor told him he could not go in that facet. You got to go as a representative or former president of Los Caminos de Rio. And so he went, but at the last minute, the mayor ended up sending a delegate to represent that, and someone from the governor's office of the state of Tamaulipas came. But we didn't know. It was the day before we found out they were coming, so we fit them into our thing. But that is really what we're dealing with when we're trying to follow the charges of our legislation to pursue. And really, I think we've done a lot with, as far as scholarly research, to really incorporate and to present a kind of a well-balanced interpretation of the events. And like I was going back over the road and the contradictions in the historic documents, I mean, really, there are so many of that in just trying to define the battle, the actions of the battle, and all that. So that's why we like to support the historic record with archaeological evidence, and that's why we continue to do investigations at the battlefield, but also with surrounding U.S.-Mexican War sites around here, to try and come up with some representation, a more accurate picture of what took place about 160 years ago down here.
They're probably a little bit embarrassed by the fact that they did lose the war, and really don't want to be reminded of it.
Yes. I mean, it's definitely, if you visit the museum, was it of invasions or so in Mexico City, they really cover that. In the 1820s, when Mexico gained her independence from Spain, they really looked to the U.S. kind of as a big brother or big sister republic. They borrowed a lot from the U.S. Constitution and forming their own republic. And it's a shame that only a few years later, this war really forever changed the way they viewed the American society, and they always kind of see them now as the greedy big neighbor, just willing to take.
But they wanted to compromise, right? And they would say, take it from the Colorado, what is it, in Harlingen? Is that and then they said, the United States said, we want it all the way to the...
Real. Yeah, that was always, well, let me go into that a little. It was, what Mexico always viewed its Texas colonies, and even during the Spanish colonial period, the southern boundary of the Texas province was the Nueces River and on up. It was just a small chunk, but when Mexico defeated Santa Anna and had him sign the Treaty of Velasco, they claimed the Rio Grande River to be the southern boundary, which that incorporated the community of Taos and Santa Fe, and it really goes up all the way up into the present Wyoming, the southern part of present Wyoming. So at that point, it was really hard for Mexico to come to any terms when Texas decided to become a state in the Union in 1845, and the United States annexed them. And President Polk said, reassure Texas, the southern boundary of Texas will be the Rio Grande River, and that's where we got into the dispute where there was no way any Mexican president could come to terms with that boundary. And that's why Herrera was a president in 1845, and on the eve of Polk being inaugurated in office, he was overthrown by Paredes by the ongoings with negotiating. They've been going since the mid-1840s. The U.S. had been trying to form treaties to acquire New Mexico and California territory. So they knew the United States wanted to expand. And they knew with the annexation of Texas that it was inevitable, and they wanted really a leader that would